Welcome to the session. I'm Rachel Blackburn. I'm on the corporate operations team here at Oracle, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. This webinar is part of the weekly Oracle at Oracle webinar series, where we have the opportunity to hear from the executive team that reimagined Oracle. In this series of webinars, if you're not familiar, we share insights from our own journey to the cloud and demonstrate how we're using Oracle Cloud to power our business and enable exceptional customer and employee experiences, and share our learnings along the way so that others can do the same. Let's dive into today's topic. Over the course of the next 35 minutes or so, you'll hear how Oracle is reimagining talent management with Oracle HCM Cloud. And now I'll turn it over to your webinar host for today, Angie Dodson, so she can introduce herself and tell you about what she does at Oracle.
Thanks, Rachel. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this session today. It's a privilege to share our story on talent management and that journey. My name is Angie Dodson. I work at Oracle, and my responsibility today encompasses a few. I oversee our HR technology implementations, along with our shared service centers and our America's field HR organizations. So that's a little bit about what I do at Oracle, and I look forward to sharing our story. So let's get started, Rachel. Of course, I think everyone's probably familiar with our safe harbor statement. I'll leave you with that for a moment. All right, let's dive in. So like a lot of our customers, we had many complex internal systems and processes. And really, to be able to innovate instead of just maintain, our HR team had to rethink how we were doing things and why we were doing things the way we were. We also needed a technology foundation that let us focus on our strategy rather than just sort of keep patching things together. We needed systems that could give us better visibility into our people and help managers focus on developing their teams and employees, and of course, attracting and recruiting the right talent. And when we think next around shifting to Oracle HCM Cloud, we upgraded our core HCM applications to cloud in March of 2016, so a few years ago. But our journey actually began before that, starting with talent management, workforce compensation, and Taleo applications. HCM has really given us an integrated solution that's easy to use, has strong reporting and analytics, and is flexible enough. And that's pretty key, right? To be flexible enough to support our growth and, of course, our acquisition strategy. I wanted to share a little bit next around our HR transformation. And it's really centered around three strategic pillars that we call our big bets. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. And it's really grounded in the belief of how do we enable our employees to succeed, which then in turn helps our customers succeed. So let me talk a little bit about these three components. One is insight that matters. And really that is all around getting better data. And this is an area for HR that we haven't always been great at. So how do we get that better data? How do we have the right analytics and measurements so that we get the insights to help us drive innovation and decisions that really make a difference? The second piece is around employee experience. And this is a relatively new focus area over the last few years, right? Thinking about the employee experience and then innovating around the various pieces of what HR does, right? How we attract, how we retain, how we help our leaders develop their talent. And so that's important. What is the employee experience and what's that focus end to end? And then, of course, to kind of wrap it all up is really the integrated technology. And that is how we're bringing our people, our information, and our experience together to help us drive, really deliver on our HR strategy. So I thought I would share with you a quick, next view of where Oracle is today. And you'll see highlighted in orange, this is kind of a, where we are in our journey to adopt the cloud. Prior to our first step into the cloud with Oracle Talent Review, we had already made the move to a global single instance many years back. So think like, late 1990s, early 2000s. So the single instance is important as we talk around, analytics and data and one view. And you'll hear me talk about that throughout. Last year, we completed the launch of goals, career development, and performance. And why I call this out is, career development is an important part of our employee, proposition and strategy. And so we know career development is a driver of an engagement and enablement at Oracle. And so we've got a lot of initiatives around that, as well as technology to help us make it happen. Our goal overall, because I often get asked this, sort of what's next, is to adopt the full Oracle Cloud HCM suite. And we continue to work with our partners internally, which is on our internal IT group, and of course, product development, to help us drive those implementations and make the most of our upgrades that happen throughout the year. We're constantly adding new functionality, like probably you all are, right? And that helps us get better data out of our systems. It helps make the process easier, but it also makes the user experience better and better. And so before I dive into the details of our session, I thought I'd share with you kind of our transformation framework. As we work towards reimagining what talent management looks like at Oracle, we leveraged our framework for digital transformation, and it's really built on these 4 areas. Streamline. This is thinking about the end-to-end process and removing and simplifying steps wherever possible. Empower. How do we allow our users to, get in, get what they need to have done, and then get out and get to the next thing that they need to do with their day, right? Delight, right? Designing a positive experience that users love. And this starts with our users, right? I remember in the, years back when we would, be thinking about a system and getting ready to implement it, we had our super user hat on, right? We were configuring and customizing a solution that was tailored to our super users. That's long gone. We're tailoring experiences to our users today that may only touch our system once a week, once a month, once a year. And then, of course, the last piece of it really being automating, and that's automating the end-to-end experience with Oracle Cloud. So I thought I would share, as we dive into the details of talent management, I'd like to share with you a little bit about our talent management challenge, right? And I think some of this remains true today, right? I don't think we're ever done. But from a big picture point of view, we needed to make sure that we had the right people in the right roles, and of course that we were helping them contribute and engaging them. And this meant we need agile, ready now talent. And talent review really provides us the ability to identify those business needs in advance so that we can then match our people and roles more quickly and more effectively. Manager enablement, right? This is all about helping our managers and our employees to deliver on their business initiatives and really be successful at Oracle. And one of the things that we did to help that was we automated the talent profile, which helped reduce the time to complete a talent review. And just a little data point, this saved 27,000 hours of administrative time. That's a lot. That's a lot of time that people could be spent, that our employees and managers could be spent doing other things. And so that's, something we were looking at, and how do we continue to reduce that time so that we can really focus on the things that matter, and that's the conversations and the development actions that we want to take. When we think about, career growth, right? How do we help our employees build their careers at Oracle? This meant a few things, but one, it required, setting expectations for managers around this objective. How do we help them do this? How do we have them help them have productive conversations with their teams and their employees around development? One, data point that I would share is that from our analytics, we noticed that employees in a talent review had a 63% higher rate of job movement than those that didn't. And you may notice I said movement. So it may not have been a promotion up, it may have been a lateral move. And movement was really key to us because we know that movement impacts skill development. And career development, as I said earlier, is a driver of engagement and enablement at Oracle. And so how do we kind of pull these things together and help our employees? We wanted to be a destination company. We want to be the company that people come to and they stay and they grow their careers. It's not just to stop in the journey. And the last piece of this is really around business value, right? How do we partner with the business to help them? Because they can't achieve their strategies and operational plans without the right people, and having people, be able to focus on their job. And so this really is around having the talent now and in the future to do what they need to do. And to do that, you got to understand your people, right? You've got to understand the skills that they have and the skills that they don't, so that we can develop and focus that. Before we incorporate a talent review, sorry, Rachel, I got ahead of myself. There was one other point I wanted to share. Before we incorporate a talent review, gathering the information needed for business leader to have a talent review and have that discussion was incredibly burdensome. I'll give you just a quick example. We did a review with 1,300 of our top leaders. And this is prior to having the technology, right? It took 8 weeks to review and assess 1,300 people. And we thought that was fast. And so today with the technology, we've shaved all that off. And so it allows you to have more of these ongoing conversations. And it allows you to have, you're able to collect information and view people data for one employee up to an entire organization. And that allows HR and leadership to have strategic discussions. And better yet, again, focus on actions and focus on, succession. And that allows us to better utilize the skills and talent that we have today, and utilize them and get them aligned for future roles and opportunities. So now I just thought I'd share a few other benefits, right? Because we're often asked, give us some data points. What are some of the results? And I think overall, I would say that talent review has become a catalyst for change in our organization, and has allowed us to really focus on employee development. We are certainly not done, but there's some things that we've seen. So one is the time, right? I've shared a couple of points around that. We've shaved off a ton of time needed to prepare and complete these reviews. We've also increased our insights, because year over year, we increase the number of people who go through a talent review, but also we're increasing the data on our people. And so that allows us to do more and hone in on the challenges and where we need to have, the right people in the right roles. So insights, ratings, all of these things have been benefits to implementing talent review. And so as I think about kind of what this means for HR, we've had to do things differently, right? To keep up with the needs of the business. We've had to become more collaborative. And that's, of course, using different, social components, more insightful. And that's, using analytics, making sure that we're measuring the right things, because there's certainly no shortage of things to measure in HR. And that helps you figure out too, like, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? So defining the right problem and then using those analytics to help us hone in and figure out what the right solution is for that problem. We're more talent focused than I think ever before, right? And of course, mobile. So I thought I would share how talent review has impacted our talent management strategy. And I have an example for you. So if we think about, talent management at Oracle, let me talk a little bit about this. Much of our company holds annual meetings to review our top talent, broaden our employee skill base, and of course, create succession plans and focus on critical roles, et cetera. There's all kinds of things, right? But there's this talent review at a senior level. Then, they have development tracks, right? We can figure out, what we need to develop or focus in on. So in the case I want to share with you, it's really focusing on our college hires, right? And we have a big group of college hires that we bring in every year, and we put them into this program where they start off as a sales support role. And as we progress their career, we move them to a quota carrying position where they'll now own the complete sales cycle. And so what's important is, to do this, we obviously define what's the skill set required to be successful in each role. And then during our talent review process, we assess that against our criteria to make sure that we've got the right employees in the right roles. And of course, concurrently, we're developing what you're looking at here is the development tracks, right? Within our sales training group to help bolster product knowledge, sales methodology, which all results in our employees being better equipped to help our customers find success. So I've talked a little bit about, Talent Review has a ton of information around, it's our most important data that we have about our talent strategy, but it also allows us to see downstream what things we might need to build and create. And so if we stay here for just a second, Rachel, right, you're sort of seeing the transition plan, right? And what we did is we had to sort of imagine our frontline manager program and think about, because we found a gap, right? So we saw a performance gap. And so we looked at, through the analytics, what do we need to do to make sure that our managers are in a position to succeed? And that means a focus on their people and their teams, right? And so you'll see sort of a little bit of the program that we put in place, sort of this ongoing program. And, what this also does is it helps us think about what we need to do next, right? And so this is never done. As we think about, developing our frontline managers and developing their teams, with the data that we have, it leads us to the next. What do we need to do next to keep them being successful? And so our sales organization was really able to use this data and create a program that works and of course is successful. And just one last thing on this slide that I would share with you, as a result of building this program to close those skill gaps, they were able to see, okay, now we need to expand to things like executive presidents. What do we need to do around hiring? How do we continue to fine tune that process and make sure that we're bringing the right people in and that we're developing them? So anyway, this is a little bit of an example of a group of college hires that we brought in. They're obviously very important to Oracle's strategy. And we noticed some things from the data that maybe weren't working as effectively as it should have. And so we were able, with the data, to hone in on the frontline managers and really come up with a program that helped them develop the skills that we saw as gaps. And so this is kind of the beauty of Talent Review, right? And there's lots of examples like that. We've got examples in finance, even in our HR organization, where we were able to define what the problem is and put the right solutions in place. And then I have a quote that I want to share, because I can talk about this as HR, right? But what's really important is how our managers are thinking about it, right? Where they're seeing the impact. And this is a quote from one of our Oracle managers. And I think the thing that stood out to me in her quote was continuity and consistency and transparency. Those are things that, maybe she didn't have. And now she's got this. And then she uses this information to really better develop and coach her reps towards their success. And then, of course, we all think about the bottom line, right? This is reduce the time to productivity. So she's been able to accelerate, the potential and the time to realize value from the team. And we know, when our team members get in, they start closing deals early, that that leads to more success. And it actually, from our analytics, plays a role in retention. And so I thought I would share this. And then, Rachel, if you'll just stay here for a moment, I just thought I'd quickly, I know it's all about, talent management, but one of the other things that I thought I would share is another big impact area for Oracle is performance management. And we shifted our focus to ongoing conversations from kind of a once a year type of process to ongoing. And really, this was a couple of years ago, but we knew that our traditional approach wasn't meeting the requirements for our business today and it needed reform. But as I think about the current environment that we're in, and a lot of people are working remotely, this is now more important than ever, right? Because we need to have ongoing conversations with our teams, not just to check in on how they're doing or what barriers we might need to help them remove, but also around their performance. How are they doing? How can we help them to be better? And so I just thought I'd share a couple of points around, shifting that focus to ongoing conversations. So sort of an 80-20 rule, right? 80% of our feedback we want ongoing and more frequently. And, as I said, we shifted to this more forward-looking conversation, which we believe better supports personal growth and career development. And the HCM feature check-ins really helps managers and employees track their progress on their goals, and of course, identify where manager support is needed. We did change our approach for ratings. So we no longer rate each individual job competency and performance goal, but we move that to a single rating for all competencies and a single rating for all performance goals. And this streamlined approach really makes our annual review more of a wrap-up for the performance year. And so I've even seen that in our language change. Instead of talking about an annual performance review, we're talking about annual wrap-ups, right? And it's a slight change, but it's an important shift because our goal is to have these ongoing conversations. And so the details have already been covered. And so it's more of a quick wrap-up and a reminder of where we've been, and of course then focus to what's the future looking. The integration of performance, HCM performance, with our other talent applications really provides that more holistic view. And so that's an important benefit as well, is seeing that more holistic view versus just these kind of singular, data points and not in context of one another. I thought I'd also share one thing that we did do too, is with the flexible configuration of goals and performance, this has really allowed us to only incorporate the features that we want to kind of keep our process streamlined and lean. And this is a business decision for everyone, right? But for example, we chose not to use weights and measurements for performance goals. Other groups may, but for us, we wanted to kind of keep that more streamlined and, and more simple. I think I was kind of glancing at my notes. I think another piece of this, right, has been in the performance module, the anytime feedback, the check-ins that I mentioned, the participant feedback, the evaluation content. It's also immediately available to both managers and employees. And why is that important? Because of transparency, right? We want to be more transparent, and this allows us to do that. I think, Rachel, let's move to the next slide, because I think, we'll have lots of time for Q&A, and I think that's important. But before we go to Q&A, I would just kind of talk about the integrated suite of talent management and how this has helped us. It really provides us more of a fluid and unified way of tracking and managing in ways that we hadn't realized before in the old unautomated way. And so what does that result in? It's a better user experience, not only for our employees, but for our managers. And then from a data perspective, right, the integrated suite provides us an easier way to bring all of this relevant data together for reporting and analytics. And so that's been a big benefit too. And I keep kind of going back, holistic view, right? The more insights we have about our people, the better we can deploy that. And talent review allows us to do that. So Rachel, I know I finished up a couple of minutes early, but we always seem to have lots of questions. And I think that's kind of the most important part of this. So I know I see some Q&A. Do you want to cover, and we can get started with that portion of the call?
Yeah, thank you, Angie. So to start, we'll just go through the list of questions. How has talent review changed the way your HR team is able to add value to the business?
I feel like I'm on repeat sometimes, right? Talent review has allowed us to really consistently identify and know much more about our employees than ever before, right? What skills they have, what skills they don't, how do we develop that? Who's at risk? Who's in a critical role? Making sure that we've got the right resources deployed in the right manner. Talent review is dynamic. And so what does that mean? It obviously enables a more insightful and collaborative discussion because you have more fingertips at your you have more information at your fingertips about your talent, right? For example, if you're going into a new market or you want to open a new office, you can see who's mobile and who has the skills. And we didn't used to have that. And this has really helped change the conversation, right? People are taking action in ways they haven't before because they didn't have as robust information. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with managers where they said, I didn't know that, or I learned something new. And that's the whole point, right? Because when we have that robust information, we can drive to better decisions about retention, development, and placement. And I think from an HR point of view, this has enabled HR to be more strategic, right? We always talk about being strategic and getting a place at the table. We can be proactive and creative in our solutions. Compensation is not always the answer. And so when we think about our people development, we can hone in. This also means that as an HR organization, we've got to be ready. This is part of the downstream effect. If you're identifying gaps from your talent review discussions, you've got to be ready to put in solutions for those gaps. And so I think that that's probably some of the biggest things that has added value to the business. And I'll leave with one example, and then we can go to the next call, Rachel. But I think the first time I realized that something definitely had changed is when we would get a call, right? And we would say, hey, we've got an opening in this country, and we need these skills, and we need these language skills. And we were able to go and pull together a slate of internal candidates for that role. We didn't have to go outside because we had that information and we could pull for that. And so I think that's critical also in sort of workforce planning and employee development.
Great. And moving on to the next question, if you're ready, Angie.
Yeah.
So how did you measure and tie these outcomes that you presented to talent management?
Sure. And it's a great question because it's always about measurements, right? And so as I kind of look, so let's start big, right? We do an employee survey, an annual employee survey called Your Voice. And this is a survey that really helps us hone in on our kind of key strategic imperatives, right? And it also tells us, are we making progress? Of the things that our employees have given us feedback, are we driving actions that make progress? And one thing that has come out of this the last couple of years is employee development, career development. People, when they came into Oracle, they saw this as a company to grow and develop their skills, as a company that they wanted to stay at. But we also saw a few years ago through our exit data that our people that were leaving weren't realizing that. And so that kind of caused us to go in and look at, this, career development journey. What does it mean? And there's all kinds of different, pieces of that journey. But what we started to look at is, okay, what does career development mean? And how do we help people? How do we help them grow their skills? And in large part, right, we had to look at our resources. We had to look at our solutions and make sure our communications were right. We launched campaigns, the future you, excuse me, and did a bunch of different initiatives on the employee side. But on the manager side, what we learned through the feedback is that managers didn't know how to have a productive conversation with their employees around development. What can I say about promotion to the next level? What can I say about, moving, to a different organization? And so that allowed us to help develop managers in that way. And so some of the metrics that we looked at movement, right? How, I think last year we had 20,000 people move around the company in different jobs. So we look at movement. We look at the metrics from our Your Voice survey. Are we making progress? And I think we moved up 2 full percentage points in satisfaction around that area. Again, we're not done. We've got more to come. And each time we do the survey, we get more feedback. Each time we do a talent review, we get more feedback. But those were some of the key KPIs. we're also, because you heard me talk about making sure that we continue to refine the process and the experience so that it's as streamlined, and so people don't get caught up in the administrative pieces of it, right? That they focus more on the conversations. And so that work is never done. And our solutions, of course, get better and better. But those are a few things that I would share around that. One kind of interesting thing too, as part of our process, talent process in your voice survey, we also learned that we had some work to do in onboarding. And so as I talk about, bringing lots of people in, we were attracting because they saw this opportunity, but yet they weren't realizing it and they would leave. We also saw that we had some work to do in our onboarding. We weren't doing as great of a job onboarding, and our kind of the key metric that we were looking at there was satisfaction. And at the time, we started this, we had a 33% satisfaction rate, which was really pretty poor. And so, like everything that I've talked about with reimagining the talent management, we looked at our onboarding, and that's not just HR, right? Real estate plays a role, IT plays a role. And so really looking at some of those key metrics that you have, and if you don't have them, figure out how to get them, right? Because then that allows you to spend time on those problems that actually matter. And onboarding was a big problem for us because we hire thousands of people every year. It's important to those new hires and to our bottom line that we get it right. So just another example of metrics and data and how to focus on the right problem.
Great. Next question. Did you learn anything from your implementation that changed the way you recommend this talent review to clients?
Definitely. And I would say that I think we've learned something in everything we've turned on, right? And so from the outset, I would say, focus on, like, first and foremost, who your audience of users is going to be, right? Because that leads you to different outcomes in you're getting ready, whether it's your change management, your communications, your configurations. But one of the things that I learned and what we learned is all around employee experience. And so I mentioned this earlier, right? Where in the past, it was the super users, it was the HR experts that were, gathering the business requirements and putting it, all down. I need everything to do this. Those days are over with the cloud. And so what we've done, and I feel like it's been pretty impactful, is I think I say, we bring in not just the usual suspects into a project. Meaning we bring in employees. We have an employee experience council that's made up of all kinds of different employees and leaders from different functions in the business, from around the world, because that diversity obviously is important in getting the right solution together. And so one of the things that I would share with anyone is make sure that you're bringing different people into that project plan, right? They may not be part of the whole project, but what are their challenges? How do they use, or how would they like to use? And that insight helps you define and design a better solution. And so that's a real change that I've seen over the last number of years, is because of bringing in those different viewpoints and users who don't often use a system. We're able to get to a better experience. We're able to fine tune our processes in ways that we hadn't before. And of course, then, that's all enabled by our Oracle solutions.
Great. And Angie, you referenced moving away from weights and measures, I think in the performance reviews. Can you expand on that and what type of change management was necessary to do that?
Sure. So we obviously, prior to performance in the cloud, we were using our e-business suite performance application, right? And so, that was very much focused on the annual evaluation, right? You do this one time a year. And so before moving to the cloud, we went out and we talked to employees and managers about what they want to get out of performance, what's important to them. And I would say this, one of the things that we learned is a lot of people actually didn't want to get away from a performance discussion, right? That's important, performance management. But how we did it, they wanted to get away from. They wanted to move towards this more frequent kind of check-in. And so that allowed us to look. So we didn't have weights and measurements in the old process either, but I think it's a good example because other companies do use that, and it's fine. I think you just need to look at what makes sense for you. As I said, one of the things that we did to shorten the process was we took away the ratings on every competency and every performance goal, and we had a summary, because again, it was tied to our goal of, we want to use this sort of annual evaluation as a wrap up. So it doesn't need to be as heavy handed as it used to be. And that was just one example. When we, even with talent, I know this isn't your question, but just, it caused us to look at everything we did. We simplified the number of grids, right, on a talent box. Seems sort of simple, but we were trying, to look at every piece of the process and figure out, how do we make this simple for our users so that they want to come in and they want to do this, right? Because they get the value out of it and they're not so caught up in the lengthy process that they have to do to get there. And so, I'm trying to think of some other examples of where we may have made changes. And of course, on the spot I can't, but I'm sure as we go through it, I'll think about it.
Awesome. And have you been successful in getting Oracle leadership to update their data, for example, use talent review? And what about leaders using analytics or dashboards? And if so, how did you accomplish that?
Yeah. So let me start with the analytics question first, Rachel, and then let's come back to the talent one. So the analytics, I would say first and foremost, there are certain leaders who, go out to their own dashboards, they pull the data, they do what they need to do. There are other leaders that don't. But before I even talk about leaders, I just talk about personally HR, right? I think we had to be skilled up and develop these skills first and foremost, right? I wanted to make sure that our team knew, how to use the dashboards, how to look at the information, and then extract a story, right? What's the story that they need to share with their business leaders? What's the business problem that you've identified by looking at this information? And so first and foremost, I think it's imperative for our HR teams to be able to know how to do that. And if there's a gap, to grow and develop those skills. And we've done a lot of that. We've been developing, through kind of self-paced study, but also some programs around how do you tell stories from data? And I think that's an important development area for HR, and it hasn't always been a strength. But I've felt like we've got to know it first, and then we can start to share this with the leaders. And again, for the leaders who have no issues going in, looking at the dashboard and extracting it, great. But I also want the HR partner there to help them, figure out, well, once we've identified a problem, who do we need to help solve it? Who do we need to involve in that problem solving process? And when it comes to talent, so it's kind of we had both, but I'll go back in time. And when we implemented, talent review, we had a process. I shared with you, it was manual, right? We did PowerPoint, Excel, and all of that good stuff. And that was the example I gave of reviewing 1,300 leaders in 8 weeks. That was all done manually, right? That was before we turned on talent. And one of the things that I would say is we had leaders at that time who believed in talent, right? Who believed in this. It's not just about the performance discussion. It's also about the potential. How do we develop them for the future? How do we have, ready now talent so that when a new business opportunity or the market changes that we're ready. So we had leaders that were already bought into that. That's not who we focused on when we first implemented talent review. We focused on the leaders who weren't doing much with it. And we got them to buy in on it. One, because we're Oracle, right? These are our solutions. We want to be using our solutions, right? Because we believe, I'm a customer too, right? Our feedback helps make the solutions better. But for example, with one of our teams that hadn't really done any around talent, it was really eye-opening for them. And I mentioned this too, they learned things about their people that they hadn't learned before. So I think the real hook was getting them through the process and then getting them into that conversation and the surprises that they had around their people. Things like seeing some of their top rated talent in not so critical roles, or maybe, their top talent in roles that weren't driving a big impact. And so they were able to see that and then be able to figure out, how do we change that dynamic? How do we match that? Because we'll lose this person if they're in a role that's not really utilizing their skills. We're going to lose them. And so all of that then sort of made them users for life. And so, I think that's an important hook, is getting them there. And frankly, in today's environment, you will lose people if you're not helping them grow and build their career. And I think that was, when you look at attrition, right, that was another piece of it, right, where we would see attrition in certain groups. We would use that as a data point to go in and have the conversation. You need to do more with your people, and let me show you the way.
Great. And how does talent review fit in with all the other talent initiatives like performance management? And when do we run the talent reviews?
So the talent review, I would say a lot of organizations do them about once a year, right? But I would also tell you that there's a lot of organizations that do them more frequently, and it all depends on the business and what the business is trying to do. And I'll give you an example. We have a role, a key account director role, and these, the folks in these roles kind of might be in this role for 3 years, and then they might move on, they might stay, etc. And so one of the things that one of our leaders wanted to do was make sure that at year 2, we were thinking about what happens after year 3 with these team members, right? They have great skills. They've been doing a great job. We want to make sure they don't leave. And so for that particular business, that was how they wanted to use the TRB. Some groups will focus on top talent, making sure that they're, developing those people and making sure that they're kind of ready now for the next opportunity. Others might look at the talent review and use it to understand, people that are further down in the organization, right? And how they leverage and how they bring those folks up and get them ready for the future. So it all kind of depends. And so we have different use cases for it and different timing. But so that's that. And when you think about performance is a component of talent, right? It's the performance and potential that really helps bring kind of the view of, or talent review to life. And so from a performance point of view, our fiscal year just ended. So we're in Q1, we're at the start of our new fiscal year. And so that timing sort of mimics, what other companies would do, right? At the end of the fiscal year, the beginning of the new fiscal year, this is when we're doing our wrap-ups. So we'll probably spend this quarter, wrapping up, having those end of year conversations, and at the same time, thinking about our goals for the next year. And those aren't just our career goals, it's our performance goals, right? So it's thinking about that as well. And that's an important part of the process. And I would also just kind of going back to some of the insights that we got from our Your Voice and our talent data, right? One of the things that we heard is that at the top level, our company strategy is very clear. But as you go further down into the organizations, maybe it wasn't as clear. And so we've really leveraged goal management to help align people and align our team members' goals to the bigger Oracle strategy. And that's making a difference, right? Because when you have that alignment, people know what they need to work on and how that contributes to the broader company strategy.
Awesome. And another question for you. What skills or competencies did the HR team have to develop for the new processes and systems to be successful?
Thank you. That's one I get quite a bit, right? And so I'll break it into a couple of areas. Just like our managers and just like our employees, when we really started to focus on, it's not just about performance, it's also about potential. So we had to kind of, do some change management on that thinking, right? So that our HR teams could help managers, kind of wrap their heads around that and how to use that information to make better decisions. And at Oracle, I would just say, and this may be similar at other companies as well, our HR business partners are key resources in helping us drive change within the organization. And so we look at them as enablers, not only of our processes, but of our technology, right? And so it was important for them to not only understand some of the process changes we were making, but, in everything we've done, we've wanted to make sure HR knows how to use our tools and our systems, right? Because you need to be able to help managers and employees use them as well. And so it was change management on process, but also understanding the importance and the value of these solutions and how they could help a business sort of be more proactive in helping them achieve their goals. And so probably the one that I would say is the biggest area of development is around the analytics and the insights. And I talked a little bit about this, and I think this is ongoing, right? The tools are getting better. The information is easier to get. The dashboards have brought a lot of information at our fingertips, right? But it's still so people don't have to get, bogged down in spreadsheets. That's probably one of the biggest changes I've noticed, right? It used to be all about the data and capturing it and maneuvering the spreadsheets, and you'd spend more time doing that than actually extracting, what is this data telling me? And how do I turn that in to something that I can have a conversation with my leader about that can make a difference in their business? And so, on the analytics side, we've spent, an investment in skills, and not only, again, knowing how to use a dashboard, but also helping them, storytell. And we're not done yet. I think we've got some team members who are really great at this, and we're using them as mentors, right? And sort of gurus to share that information and their tricks for helping others. But I'm very positive, and I have a very positive outlook because, again, as I think the solutions continue to get better, and as we refine our storytelling skills, and the dashboards really kind of hone in on what you should be looking at. And so I think that helps us as well.
Great. And then we have time for just a couple more questions. Does that work for you, Angie?
Sure. Yes.
Great. How are you integrating talent management and using it along with the learning and recruiting?
So let me just tell you too, which it's sort of a related question, but what we are working on next, right? So what's Oracle working on next? And you just mentioned a few things of what we've got. So we are in active implementations right now for recruiting and onboarding and learn. And so we're going through that process right now. And, we kicked it off, I guess, just a few months ago. And so we'll be able to realize, some of those opportunities as we connect this together. But I will just share kind of a process thing that we're doing. One of the things that we do using that talent data, so when we're doing talent review discussions with leaders, obviously things that come up are opportunities, right? We need to have, what role do we have for this person? This person's ready for the next. Or we've got a gap, right? And we might need to go to the outside. So we actually bring our recruiting partners into some of our talent review conversations so that we're all connected, right? So that we're not just going outside, that we're also looking inside. We actually launched a program, I think over a year ago, called Advantage U. And this was really to drive more internal mobility in the company. We think our current employees should have an advantage of the next opportunity. And so by bringing our recruiting team in, to these talent discussions, we sort of know what roles that they're outside looking for, and we know what skills we have inside, and we can marry those things together better. Again, still work to do. But that's a little bit about what we're working on and how we're trying to bring these pieces together.
Great. That's really helpful. And so this might kind of build off of that answer that you just gave. But in terms of connecting talent review to talent development, what tools are we offering for managers to further develop their talent in line with the talent review process?
Okay. And when I think about tools, right? So as we identify gaps, either, as an individual or collectively, right? In a group, then what are we doing to actually take action on that, right? And so we use we use talent review to help us track that and help us monitor and keep track of actions. But the things that are actually being done could be different, right? It could be very personalized to the needs that we're trying to develop and grow. And so I'm not sure if I'm answering this question, Rachel, but the way I'm thinking about it as I heard you ask it is, then what are we doing? And so we have, over the last number of years, and of course we continuously have to refine them, we use, we have core leadership programs. We obviously have professional development resources. In this time where people are working more virtually, we have a lot of virtual programs. We have a lot of self-paced, self-study type of programs, learning paths that people can embark on to grow and, to progress those skills. But there's a lot of tools that we have to enable that. And then where there's something maybe we don't have, we may have to go outside or we may have to develop it. But over the last number of years, we've really used that talent data and that skill gap information to make sure that we've got programs and solutions to help, bridge the gap or reduce the gap. And then as new things emerge, we have to shift. And it's just something I would say, with any kind of learning thing, you kind of have to, in this day and age too, we just have to continuously be looking to make sure that those solutions are still relevant.
Great. And I think we'll close there, Angie, and thank you everyone for submitting your questions. Since we're almost at the top of the hour, thank you everybody for coming, submitting your questions. We hope you got some value out of this webinar, and we also hope to see you virtually, of course, on future webinars. The replay and a PDF version of this presentation will be made available to you all within 48 hours. The replay will be on Oracle Video Hub, and you'll receive a follow-up email with the presentation and instructions about how to access the replay. If you have any other questions, maybe your question didn't get answered, feel free to reach out to Oracle at oracle-contact_ww@oracle.com, and we will get in touch with an expert to see if we can't get that question answered. Thank you all for joining this Wednesday, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.